GDLS Canada, an industry leader dedicated to supporting our customers and the community.
Kerrianne Hardill, February 24th, 62, in Peterborough, Ontario. I really was raised in Bridgenorth and still live in Bridgenorth, which is just outside of Peterborough. I was 4 years old when I got my first lacrosse stick at Christmas. I remember that distinctly. It was an Etienne Martin. It had a red sticker on it. And that was my first stick. My older brother started playing he was 3 years older, so he showed an interest. And my mom and dad got involved in the Bridgenorth organization. And at the time, I just fell in love with the game. I always had my stick in my hand, and if we played in an arena, I would have been an arena rat, but I was a rink rat nonetheless. Our Bridgenorth Bowl at that time just had sand on it. They used to use a lime liner in between games to put the specific lines and creases on. Other than that, there was nothing around the bowl. My mom and another woman would sell treats and stuff, pop and chips out of the back of my dad's truck. And it wasn't until a few years after that that they did this big fundraiser to make money to asphalt the bowl and get dressing rooms and a concession stand and all that, and lights. So that was a big turn of events. So that was my start in Bridgenorth, really. I didn't actually get playing until I was 11 years old. The Peterborough Minor Lacrosse always ran summer lacrosse schools. And that summer that I was 11, they decided to have a girls' session. And it was very well attended. And it was after that teams started to crop up. One was in Lakefield, and that's where I first started playing box. It was with girls that I played hockey with. Peterborough also started a team around that time, and I moved on to play in Peterborough when the Lakefield team sort of folded. And so that box lacrosse in Peterborough took me through to about 1979. Just prior to that, I played box in Bridgenorth with the boys during my bantam years. And that was sort of a homecoming of a sort. It was fun to be able to play with the boys that I grew up with, and they were very respectful, and the fact that I was able to hold my own physically and skill-wise, there were no real issues. Maybe with some of the other teams, didn't always like playing against a girl, but my teammates were very supportive and protective of me, I guess you'd say. No, she's a few years younger. So my younger brother played against Gail in the 82 Nationals in Brampton, I believe it was. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to play in all four genres of lacrosse, so to speak. In the end, I played girls box, girls field, boys box, and boys field. At school, Don Barrie was our coach, and in order to round out a couple teams that we had, he asked me to come out and play, which I jumped at the opportunity. And once again, I was able to hold my own with the boys, and it was a great experience to play attack with the boys on a team where we had a lot of good players at the time. Yeah. Yeah, so in '78, Paul sent out invitations to, I don't know whether it was 40 or 50 of the top female box lacrosse players around the province. And they were looking to start field lacrosse. So that was just like over the moon. We had gone from playing against these Etobicoke Tomahawks that Paul coached in our league and in provincials, and it was always, a real battle. And then for this Gilkinson fellow to send a letter and invite you to come on board, it was interesting, but nonetheless, jumped on it. And my parents would drive me every weekend to Toronto or Mississauga, wherever practices were being held. And that was kind of the start of field in Ontario and Canada. So everything kind of morphed from there.
Wow. And
Which
what
was,
that like?
it was one of those chance of a lifetime, it seemed, a dream come true. I was always one who took my, hockey or lacrosse, whatever, very seriously. So to be even considered to try out for Team Canada was probably the most exciting thing that's ever happened. It was at that point that we were introduced to players from British Columbia and as well as the ones from Ontario. That pretty much that year made up Team Canada. There weren't other provinces playing at the time. We went to some tournaments as a group. The team was picked, and the rest was history. It was really an amazing experience to go to England. It was in Nottingham, England, to play against teams, even though it was the inaugural World Cup. Teams had been playing before, England, Scotland, Wales, the US, Australia. They were all very much experienced and well versed in the field game because they played in high school and universities there. So we were venturing off. As a team, we felt pretty good about ourselves. We thought we were pretty skilled as box players and thought this can't be that much harder. We were the only ones that had faith in us. There were 6 teams at the time, and we were expected to come in 6th. At one point, somebody said, well, if Canada even comes within 20 goals of their opponents, they'll be doing well. So anyways, the bottom line, we went out. The Americans beat us handedly right off the hop, and then we just sort of kept getting better and better. And by the time we hit the bronze medal game, we were in full flight, and we were able to win.
Now, were you a captain of?
I was an assistant captain with Michelle Boyer, yeah.
Oh, very good.
Which was an amazing thing in itself. Yeah, an honor. Yeah. I did.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. That must have been something.
It was exciting. I mean, we were still young enough as a group that we sort of took all those things in stride. And it's not till years later when, Coach Gilkinson sort of starts spewing off your stats that you think, oh, yeah, I did okay. After 82, I had a few bad years. I had ACL reconstruction, and so I tried out for each of the next 2 World Cups, and was sort of got down to the wire and then didn't make the team, which was very devastating at the time. But in retrospect, it probably made me a little more hungry. Like I thought, I've still got it. I can still play this. So by the time 1990 came and they were putting in names forth for the 93 team, once again, I put my name forward and probably worked harder than I ever have to get there. Barb Boyes was the head coach at the time, and she was also our provincial team coach. And she made me work very hard, like pushed me to the brink at sometimes. Like I'd leave, we'd go and we'd train for the national team, have a provincial team practice, and then depending on the day, we might have to go to a field or a track and we'd do our plyometrics. Like, this is all at 9 o'clock at night after we had put forth, I'd worked all day and then went on. But she never gave up, and I didn't either. And they took the remaining 20 players, I think it was, that were left trying out in 92, on a tour to Great Britain. I knew going into it that I was a long shot to make the team, but in the back of my mind, I remember saying to my dad before I left, I said, I'm going to make it so that it's going to be hard for them to turn me away after this. You go, girl. And so, anyways, I did. And as the tour went along, games went along, I was just getting, better and better. I could feel it within. I wouldn't start a game, but they'd put me in and I'd score a quick goal or a key goal. Anyways, we had we were there a week to 10 days. And at the last night, the coaching staff did one-on-one interviews with all the players. And you were told whether you were yay or nay, whether you were carrying on with the program. And I went in for mine, deadpan look on the faces of the coaches when I walked in, and at that point I was like, okay. And anyway, so they went through, how the last 3 years of this program had gone, or 2 years, and anyways, in the end, these smiles came across their faces. It's things you never forget. They said, yeah, you're coming with us. Wow. So I put a dead pan face on and walked out of there, not knowing which players had got good news or bad news. And I can remember walking out of the hotel outside. One of the girls followed me out, and I just started jumping up and down and said, I made it. So anyways, that was that. So played in '93 World Cup and was, again, very fortunate to be a part of the Commonwealth Games in '94 that were in Victoria. Lacrosse was a demonstration sport, and they were all Canadian teams, so they divided up into East, West, Central, and Canada. And it was just to sort of demonstrate what the game was all about. But we were a part of the opening ceremonies, the closing ceremonies, just like all of the other athletes. So that was a really good experience.
So it was field lacrosse?
It was.
It was, okay.
Yeah, it's like so many things. I know, like in Canada, for a while after, in the early 80s, women's box lacrosse sort of died out. It was a big thing and then petered out, and has struggled to sort of come back throughout the country, but they've had national championships and stuff, so players are interested in playing. But I think if there's a push on the world level, and it sounds like I read some articles that like Australia and different countries are starting to come on board and teach the game, get girls involved. And it's great, it's lacrosse, whichever way you look at it. I'm not sure that opportunities will ever be the same for women as there are in the field game, as far as, educational opportunities.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I guess I started with the school program, the high school that I'm at. I started the women's program, and it's flourished. I always had 2 teams sort of for the last 20 years that it ran. And another teacher, Jeff Chalice, and I, for a few years, we coached both the 2 boys teams and the 2 girls teams. So our spring were very full of practices and games, but always a good opportunity to work with different people. I spent some time coaching at the club level in our area, and came back for a stint to play with the women's, the senior team in our area for a few years. And anyways, it was just fun. Yeah. Yeah, so that was a great experience to be involved with from an organizational standpoint of an international event, I wasn't one of the sort of key organizers. I was kind of, in the background, but attended all the meetings and stuff. So Cheryl McNeil was one who was trying to find a facility to host. Canada was awarded the games, but now we had to find a facility. And I know she put out to different universities and places, and Trent jumped on board. They were getting a new turf field and really starting to expand their athletics. And they were very interested in having, so Bill Byrick was the athletic director at the time, and he wasn't a lacrosse person, but jumped on board and was very supportive. Peterborough actually was a great place to host, and we knew we would not be short of volunteers. And in the end, when the information was put out saying we needed volunteers for, game day stuff, booking liaisons for teams, we had so many people that, everybody kind of got one shift here and there. There was nobody really had to do put in too many hours for our volunteers, which was fantastic. It went over very well. The teams that came in from different countries were impressed with the facilities and, how well it was orchestrated. It was, it drew the good crowds when they were coming because they were very sort of festive in their pregame, almost pregame celebrations. And yeah, it was quite interesting to see. Didn't have the same volunteer base that we had in Peterborough. So yes, if I ever saw another ice bag on, for years, I was going to run the other way because, it was very hands-on for the day-to-day, game-to-game stuff that needed to be done. They were always had the thermometer out determining when breaks needed to be taken. It was a warm one, but good weather. Ice baths were the big thing at that point, and so you had to put, I forget how many bags, 2-3 bags in each of these waste baskets, and each team had probably 6 of them in their dressing rooms. So in between, you had to empty them all out, put more ice and water in, and it was just like, oh, yeah. So they had to just keep having water breaks throughout, And it only rained that time once, and Oshawa had that indoor field facility, so they just blew the whistle. Everybody moved in and down into this basement and carried on.
I remember that.
The number of teams almost doubled. Facilities doubled, so we were playing at not only Trent but at Fleming College, and which are at opposite ends of Peterborough. So that took a lot more. We had to have people that just sort of stayed at Fleming, people that just stayed at Trent, and along with that, they now have a festival for U15, U19. So that was played at the high school that I taught at, and yeah, so we had to have people there. It was quite an undertaking, but again, we got through it, and it was, again, another successful endeavor. So I had the opportunity to meet them. Their preliminary accommodations fell through, so there was a bit of a scramble to get them places. So out on Stony Lake with lots of kids, something by the dozen.
Cheaper by the dozen?
Cheaper by the dozen.
And that
So they
movie,
stayed in that
is that
house.
right?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
That was one of the places that they stayed at. So they're looking in another place on the lake that was just massive, and kids are looking, and we're like, not everybody lives like this. But they just rolled with it. They were so delightful. They sang and danced constantly, and it was a wonderful experience for them.
What a great addition,
Yes.
to the World Championship.
To the World Championship, yeah. Yeah, given what I know now. Lacrosse, and I'll sort of go with field especially. It's such a unique game, a free-flowing game. There are so many opportunities, whether it be educational or just for travel, play a national team, provincial teams. There's just so many opportunities for girls to play. It's a game that can be played at all different levels too, at a more advanced or even girls just learning. They can play, whether the ball's on the ground a lot versus in the air. They have fun. It's free-flowing, it's outside. It's a wonderful game. Even in box lacrosse, it's something a little more unique for girls. Those that like, to have some body contact with stick checking. It's a game that girls can pick up relatively quickly and play at different levels. And it's going to be interesting to see down the road how the sixes game kicks in. It was interesting watching that. It just reminded me of sort of a practice or backyard lacrosse. The goal scored, goalie picks it up, and away you go. But again, opportunities will be there for players to play. And, lacrosse is lacrosse, whatever sort of genre you take from it. So I don't have a lot of things, to share. I often gave sticks away to players that I coached for little awards or whatever. But this one is a keeper. It's a Patterson lacrosse stick. And what's so neat about this, I never did play with it because I had moved on to plastic by this point. But Joanne Stanga and I went for a visit to visit Carol and Wes Patterson at their sort of their factory. So Joanne and I each picked out a piece of lumber that we liked, and we were able to watch Wes create a stick with it. So right down to what kind of shaft we wanted, whether it was round or more hexagon. We watched him bend the stick, string it. It was a really neat experience to see, and it's just something that cherish forever because people don't get Patterson sticks anymore made by Wesley Patterson.
And I think every lacrosse player should have a wooden stick as something that they pick up from time to time.
That's
and
right.
use if they aren't playing with it in a game.
And you
At
just
least
remember what it sort of, where it
the
all
roots.
came from. Yep.
the roots of the game, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Kerri. And anything else I missed or anything like that in telling your story?
Yeah. Not that I can think of now, I'm sure down the road, but no, that's good.
All right.
Thank you.